that. Should our revenues drop substantially, which they might, are unpaid taxes considered in that?
Okay, thank you for that question. Kevin, do you wish to answer that question?
I would say the way these are recorded, based on, we're not going on a cash basis when we're doing our financials, that those would be as a receivable, so they'd be shown as part of your own source revenues until you decide you need to write them off, or there was an indication that that was going to be the case, that you'd have to bring that up, identify that with your auditor, that revenue is not, you're foreseeing that it's not going to be achieved. I think that would be a discussion that would go on at that time. Does that answer?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so just remember that it's still due until you write them off, right? So
okay. Or the belief you have with your auditors that is not something that's going to be, you'd have to identify that, this is in jeopardy and stuff. So I think that'd be something, and be a note then in your financial statements and be addressed.
But at the end of the day, there's the process of tax sale and all that also then secures that value too, right?
Right, and write-offs would occur.
Yes, that's right. Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Swever. Any other questions to this report from county councillors?
I see nothing, Mr. Warden. I will note that Rob has sent a note to say that we are live. Just happened, so.
Okay, thank you. Just like that. Very good. Yep. Well, we're on our best behavior. We know that, so that's fantastic. Welcome for those that are joining us live. Okay, seeing there's no other, we're on item C, FRCW 0820 debt management policy. And again, that was moved by Councillor Carleton and second by Councillor Robinson. Any further discussion on that resolution? Okay, I don't see any indication. Any opposed? Hearing none or seeing none, that's carried. Okay, thank you for that. All right, so moving on to the memorandum of settlement. This is under grant, and so this is moved by Councillor Mackey, second by Councillor Body. Mr. McLevy, do you have anything to add to this report?
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and good morning or afternoon. I'm not sure what it is right now, but thanks for the time. This is a pretty straightforward report. This is negotiations that we've been doing with Unifor representing employees at Rockwood Terrace. There's not a lot to add other than the piece where we were mandated with a 1.62% budget, and we've managed to negotiate within the 1.62%. But I think more importantly is the task force that has been put together for long-term care gave us a few different things that felt that we could do better at scheduling for employees and getting people to be available in long-term care. And we're happy to say that we've managed to get over some of those hurdles. So I think it's a good news report this time around. And we're trying to follow the same conversations with Lee Manor and Grey Gables coming up later this year.
Very good. No, thank you. And thank you for all your work there, Mr. McLevy. And questions from county councillors? Are there any questions?
I see nothing coming up on the chat or any hands raised.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Seeing none, then I'm going to call the question. Then, any opposed to this resolution? Hearing or seeing none, that is carried. Okay, moving on to item E. This is a tender award for Grey Road 29, and this was moved by Councillor Burley. Is Councillor Burley with us, Madam Clerk?
Yes, I think.
Okay.
We understand that
Yes,
he's having still some technical difficulties on his end that's impacting his ability to hear. So I'm not sure that he'll be able to respond.
Okay, so maybe I'll look for a different mover. Is there? I have seconded by Councillor Mackey, but is there a different mover? Would somebody likes to move this report for the construction?
I'll move Akash Desai.
Okay, Councillor Desai and second by Councillor Mackey. All right, that's regards to the report. Pat, do you have anything to add to your report?
Yeah, just some very quick thoughts. we feel that this job, we're kind of tackling it as one of our essential jobs that we still tendered, even though with COVID and our work processes are going to change here. But the window doesn't start until June 22nd, so we've got some time to work with our contractors on exactly how they're going to maintain social distancing. But one thing that we've heard a lot from OGRA is they want these jobs to go. Contractors want the jobs to go. Essential public safety road work is, basically approved by the province. So that's kind of where we went ahead and closed this tender, and we'll work with our contractor on, probably lightening up on liquidated damages and those types of things. We'll try to work with the contractor to get our key jobs done this year, because we feel if we don't do this section, we could be in trouble maintaining this through the winter. So that's why we want to go ahead with this tender.
Okay, thank you for that, Pat. And your protocols will certainly address the current status of COVID-19 for distancing and all that stuff, I presume. And you'll be putting signage up since this is if this gets supported today. You'll be putting signage up to let the community know that this is happening. Yeah,
there'll be pre-construction signage that we'll do for the at the pre-construction meeting. We'll discuss that with the contractor.
Very good, thank you. Okay,
Mr. Warden,
yes.
Councillor Millen has raised his hand. He has a question.
Okay, welcome, Councillor Millen. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Pat, have you made allowances for staff that may have gone into Walters Falls and can't find their way out?
They're all still there.
Oh, okay. All right. That's fine. Thank you.
I'm sure, Councillor Millen, if you're driving through, you're probably picking something up for the farm at the mill there, right?
Undoubtedly, if not at the hotel.
Well, maybe. Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions for county councilors?
I see nothing in the chat or no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. And seeing there's no more discussion, any opposed to the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll determine that's carried then. So then, moving on our agenda, we have other business. And we have the first part is a COVID-19 update. And I presume, Madam CAO, you're going to speak to possibly,
I am.
or?
Yes, I am. Thanks very much, Mr. Warden. So County Council, since my last verbal update on March 30th, the province has issued many directives and guidelines that are impacting our operations, particularly in long-term care and paramedic services. Our priority in everything we do remains public safety and the safety of our staff. Over the past month, we've made significant changes to our operations to protect people and to do our part to minimize the spread of the virus. The Grey.ca COVID-19 page is clearly highlighted on the website and holds all of our COVID-related resources for staff and for the public. And all other Grey County websites like Visit Grey and Made in Grey point back to this one. Our county telephone lines are answered during business hours, and 211 is available to the public 24/7. In this respect, the county has provided a small amount of additional funding to 211 to support additional staff so that they can stay on top of the increased call volume that they're experiencing. Within the Grey County Administration Building, we are operating with a bare minimum of staff. We are keeping up with accounts payable, court administration, planning applications, and a very large volume of requests for support in social services. Jody and the IT team have done a stellar job of getting everyone connected and working effectively from home. I think one thing that we can take away from all of this is that iPads for yourselves are not ideal for remote meetings, and we will include a change back to laptops for consideration in next year's budget. We've also been made aware, and this is for all of you going forward, there are increased security threats circulating out in the world, and everyone is reminded to be extra vigilant when it comes to securing passwords, not accessing links to external sources, etc. The province has provided additional funds for our use in responding to COVID-19. There's additional funding for long-term care specific to our response, as well as a general 1.5% funding increase. We're still waiting for a case mix index and some other specifics on this, and we anticipate having a report for you to consider in May. I know that many of you are interested in the Social Services Relief Fund that was released by Municipal Affairs and Housing last week. The province announced 148 million across the province, and that Gray's allocation on the Social Services Relief Fund was 2.3 million. That money is being administered through the Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative, or CHIPPI, and is intended to assist the service managers in supporting a range of vulnerable populations, including people living in community housing, supportive housing, low-income social assistance recipient, and others who require social services support, as well as those experiencing homelessness. So just a few details around this funding. First of all, it's an allocation over this entire fiscal year, so April 2020 through to March 2021. So we need to be conscious of the fact that there will be a recovery phase to these funds, as well as the current acute phase. What we've been given notice for is that we'll receive 50% of those funds, so 1.15 million in April, and then another 25% in July of 578,000. The final 25% would come to us in September if we can provide justification of an ongoing need. Otherwise, those funds will be dispersed to other places with a higher COVID need. We're still in the very early stages and working hard to get an idea of actually how the funds will flow to those most in need. We did provide immediate support to OSHARE to address the huge demand for meals, and as well to Y Housing. We're reaching out to agencies that provide housing and homelessness services for vulnerable residents to see where they're at and the identified gaps that they have in their service. We're seeing shelter needs for quarantine and self-isolation, and also the requirement to provide shelter to homeless folks to ensure that they're able to maintain the required distancing and minimize the spread of infection. We estimate $40,000 to $50,000 a month over and above our regular budget just for that emergency housing. Funds will also be needed for isolation services. So if people are in isolation and they need to be brought food, or there's enhanced security required for the places where they're staying. We know that later on in this process, there'll be increased demand for sustainable housing benefit to cover rental arrears. So we're hearing from the charities and other groups in your communities. We're asking anyone who reaches out to us that we don't normally work with to complete a short application form so that we are staying on top of all of those requests. And then Anne-Marie will bring back a status update to you in May to give you a sense of what we've been able to fund, where we have some questions for council to consider, and the things that are maybe outside of the mandate of these funds that you may wish to consider under some other support mechanism. With regard to social services, the province has expanded access to temporary emergency assistance under Ontario Works for those in financial crisis who have no access to other supports. This funding will help cover needs such as food, rent, medicine, transportation, and other services. The temporary assistance will help to bridge many applicants that would be in crisis until the federal benefits are rolled out and received. There's an online application that's being released today, and demand is expected to rise in the coming weeks. Currently, we're seeing one emergency assistance application for every 3 full OW applications. Staff are working through individual circumstances to determine what other sources of income may be available, such as CERB or EI. The cap that we normally work under for discretionary benefits has been lifted in order to issue emergency benefits for COVID-related expenses to our existing OW and ODSP recipients, and that's an emergency $100 for an individual or $200 for families. Despite face-to-face access no longer being an option, staff are reaching out and increasing contact via phone, email, and text to make sure that our clients are supported, informed, and that their needs are met. We are monitoring the trend reports that we get on the kind of calls that are coming to 211 to see where there are gaps in service or unmet needs so that we can help our partners step up in that respect. On the childcare side, you'll recall that the childcare centers were closed by the province and remain closed as the schools are. And there's been no update from the Ministry of Education as to a timeline when this may be lifted. Our priority as a Grey County is to ensure that we're retaining these childcare businesses and the workers in the sector so that we have a childcare system when the state of emergency is lifted. The centers have received operating allocation up to the end of the second quarter for 2020 and reimbursement for child care subsidy for the month of March, which is paid in arrears. We're waiting for additional direction from the Ministry of Education to determine what financial supports can be flowed to operators moving forward to assist with that sustainability and staff retention. And we're maintaining a question and answer document for providers as information becomes available. And staff are holding weekly teleconferences with the operators just to check in and ensure that if they have any unanswered questions, we'll get them the information that they need. Our home child care providers are in a similar circumstance. Those home child cares are not operating either under the direction of the medical officer of health. We intend to flow money to them similar to what they received in March. Should the provincial direction change regarding the flow of funds, we'll come back to you, to council, with options to consider. The hope is that if we continue to provide them with funding, they will remain rostered with Grey County Home Child Care. The home child care workers are reaching out by phone and email to the individual providers, again, similar to what we're doing with the operators. Our special needs resourcing agencies are also moving into this electronic service delivery age that we're in and reaching out to parents and helping and providing help through social media, phone, and email. So we're really hoping that no one's being left in a crisis situation without some kind of support around them. Moving on from there, just to speak to transportation, our winter control season wraps up April 15th, and Pat and his team have taken a look at the manpower necessary to complete critical tasks that need to be done before we get to next winter's winter control. We've adjusted activities to be completed by a single person in a piece of equipment, or using staggered shifts. So trying to, as Pat just mentioned, trying to get to that social distancing and keeping our staff safe. This does have some impacts on the efficiency that we can undertake all of our regular tasks with. The net of all of their deliberations is that we won't hire any backup or summer students this summer. And we'll just run with our full-time complement and the 9 seasonal employees. Regarding, you can appreciate that there's a lot of work that happens in transportation from a maintenance perspective that needs to keep intersections and sightlines safe, and just that maintenance of structures and bridges, and that we do need to stay on top of that. Regarding the 2020 construction, on April 1st, purchasing advised the public that one released tender, which was the bridge replacement on Grey Road 9, was being canceled, and that some tenders that we had released were being delayed until further notice. So that included the tenders for Grey Roads 11 and 15, Grey Road 2, and a microsurfacing project on another portion of Grey Road 2. So the paving projects that are going ahead are Grey Road 4 in Durham, Grey Road 9 in Southgate, Grey Road 15 in Meaford, Grey Road 19 in Town of the Blue Mountains, and Grey Road 29 through Walters Falls. So that's with that. And then you also have seen from Economic Development, Culture and Tourism, they've been doing some significant outreach and education to assist the small business community. They've developed a lot of resources in just 3 short weeks, including that community and business resiliency map showing what businesses and services are available. The Economic Development Working Group, which is Savannah's team, and then all of the local economic development officers, are working together and able to reach out and provide support, advice, and guidance to businesses on a very quick turnaround. This group is already thinking about recovery and what needs to happen when restrictions are lifted. I also wanted to give kudos to this group because they were among the first to be trained for redeployment into long-term care, and there are 15 of our economic development, culture, and tourism staff who've been trained to support long-term care. With regard to paramedic services, things are stable at this time. There's been a huge amount of work put into forward planning to keep the paramedics safe with the appropriate PPE and making sure that we have enough supplies and planning response scenarios should the situation here become more critical and our hospital facilities exceed capacity. The service has been working in partnership with public health, fire, police, hospitals, the community agencies, and the private sector on many aspects of this preparation and response. And I believe that these strengthened relationships will be of benefit to us during this recovery period, but certainly beyond that. They've done a great job in coordinating those donations of PPE. And you've heard earlier that stuff's being stored at Grey Roots and being taken out to the services that require it. Similarly, in long-term care, there's been a vast amount of work done to safeguard the homes and our home staff and prepare them to respond to an outbreak. Jennifer will be providing a detailed summary to the committee in the meeting that follows this one. I wanted to finally say that there have been questions about staffing and whether or not we should consider layoffs. So I will speak to the staff utilization today, and I know Kevin mentioned it a little bit here. We are looking carefully at our cash flow, and as we get a better sense of where we are financially, we'll be bringing that information to council. But specific to the staffing, if we look at all of the Grey County staff and we pull out the paramedics and the long-term care staff, that leaves us with a complement of 250. And as I've noted in this report, for some of our departments, their workload has actually increased during this crisis response in places like social services and housing. And other departments like finance, HR, legal, court admin, planning, and clerks are still needed to provide those critical functions that they always provide. So out of the 250 staff that are considered quote unquote non-essential, there are 90 that are available to be redeployed to other duties, either in long-term care, housing custodial, or for future requirements. So far, we've trained 28 to work in long-term care, and there are another 30 scheduled to be retrained next week. At the outset of this crisis, I told staff that we would want to continue to support them for the time being, as long as they were working and willing to be redeployed. If they should refuse a redeployment request and they don't have a medical reason for that refusal, then the messaging has been delivered that they'll be placed on an unpaid leave of absence, or in other words, laid off until the situation resolves. So at this time, I'm not anticipating the need for layoffs. And when I talk to my other county colleagues across the Southwest, that would be a very, I think, a similar tag that most of them are taking. We need these people, and we're going to have a tremendous amount of work for them to undertake during the recovery phase. And as we try to, deal with a backlog of work that's, kind of accruing right now. There are some counties that do offer library services or some of those things, recreational services. And sometimes those staff are treated differently, but that's not the place that we're in Grey County at this time. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but that's kind of the Coles Notes version of where we are right now.
Well, thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam CEO, for that lengthy report and very much very in depth. And I want to take this time to thank you on behalf of County Council for all the work that you're doing, and staff. You know what, you guys are doing an amazing job, and I just wanted to let you know that we're quite proud of the work that you're doing. Are you able to send that out to all county councilors, because there's quite a bit of information in that, Madam CEO?
Yes, I would have sent it earlier if I could have got it done earlier. So I will send it out to all of you this afternoon. Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you again for all your hard work. And I think I saw Councillor Desai indicated that he had a question. Councillor Desai, you there?
Yes, Mr. Warden, thank you. I guess if we're going to get the report in the afternoon, I'll look it up in there. But I just wanted to ask, with regards to the CHIPPY funding, if that could be accessed by food banks, because we do have a couple of food banks in our municipality that have been asking for funds, and one of them had a volunteer specifically contact me and refer to the provincial funding that was supposed to flow through the municipal service managers. So my question is whether the CHIPPY funding can be used, accessed by food banks, and two, how, if they can, how can they access it? Thank you.
Anne Marie, if you're on the line, do you want to just speak to the specific, how, getting an application for Josh and that? Oh, maybe she's got troubles.
Oh,
Okay, there's an application, as I mentioned in the report, that we've asked that people complete, and then we'll be looking at all of those and trying to put some priority around them and making sure that we've got the right things covered off. So maybe what I'll do when I send out this report, I'll also include the application form with you. And then if you're asked directly, then you can at least have that document to be able to provide to someone and with the instructions of how to get it back in here. Would that work?
That would be perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay.
okay, thank you, Councillor Desai. Is there any other questions to the report that Kim has made? That anybody on your chat there, Madam Clerk?
I see nothing, Mr. Warden.
I just have a few things to discuss here, or just bring up to date. As your warden, as you're quite aware, we declared, I think it was March 26th, and I see all the lower tier municipalities had either declared before or after that. There was just one sort of housekeeping that was sent out, and I saw a few responses that this is a different type of an emergency situation than most. If we need to call on one representative from all the lower tiers, please get that into our clerk's department or whatever, just in case it's only something really elevated. And I know in speaking to Barb Compasser a few weeks back, she had raised that, and certainly want to make sure that if there is an elevated situation, that we have a representative from each municipality sitting at that table if the need arises to that point. As your warden, I'm quite busy with regards to speaking on behalf of County Council through either a commercial on Spotify, which Rob sort of got me set up for, and part of that is all about washing your hands, and certainly in a number of different town hall meetings with Bruce Power, and we get our kudos to Bruce Power for all the efforts that they're doing. They're they are a great corporate citizen in our area, and we're so lucky to have them in our area for what they are doing. Again, a big shout out to Dr. Era, who is part of the medical officer of health for Grey Bruce Health Services. And again, he's a great source, a reliable resource. And, as he says, people are concerned, but people aren't scared. And for him, his leadership has certainly proven very strong for this during this situation. I certainly have been in lots of meetings with your local MP, MPP, certainly Lisa Thompson sets up a town hall session once or twice a week. So I'm certainly plugged in on regional issues along with our CAO. Again, I want to thank our CAO and staff for all the hard work that they're doing to get through this, and we will get through this. It just we have to bunker down and be safe, as Dr. Ayres says, it's coming, and we have to be prepared for that. And we are as a community, and that's a big part of what we are, as a strong community, and we work through that. Again, this is the Easter weekend coming up, so I know we're being reminded that certainly communicate with your family through electronic means, but again, we have to keep the physical or the social distancing there, and we have to stay put, and it's about saving lives. That's the big part of what we have to do, and we're doing that. Again, as Dr. Ayres says, continue to wash your hands. He said his mother taught him how to do that, and that's what he remembers. And I'm sure we've all heard that from Dr. Era, and it's very important. So I don't know if you have any questions to me, but certainly I'm available anytime, those that wish to reach out for me. And certainly if you have concerns in your community, I know every day through probably your own EOC meetings or us at the county, certain things arise, and we're getting updates all the time, both from federal or provincial. And I know that the essential business list got changed there on Friday, so it continues that, and our CIO and other staff keep us informed, and that's great. So at that point, I'll leave it at that. Stay safe, and I don't know if there's any questions or comments from other county councilors. Any comments? I know you're having your own EOC meetings that are keeping yourself in the loop too, and that sort of thing. So anything more from you, Kim, or staff?
I think one thing that last Friday, Dr. Era sent something out about whether consideration should be given to some sort of a centralized tip line or place to receive these complaints under the emergency orders about people gathering and non-essential businesses and that sort of thing. So I had some preliminary discussions with your CAOs. It's just that the police and the health unit are feeling, I think, quite overloaded with handling this, and we're looking for someone else to take some of the weight off of their shoulders. So I will continue to work with your folks to see if there's a way forward that we could provide some support to those people acting kind of as a central spot. But we're still trying to work through those details. There's one more thing on the agenda as well, I think from Kevin.
Yes, I will get to that if there's no other comments with regards to COVID-19. I know that this is an Easter weekend and there is concern of people moving around, and I think as Dr. Era said, is try to refrain from non-essential travel. And I know that with the announcement that came out on Friday that even short-term accommodations are not allowed unless it's in an emergency with relationship to COVID-19. So seeing there's no other comments out there, I'm going to move over to Kevin with regards to the June tax installments from lower tiers. Kevin?
Thank you, Warden. Yeah, I surveyed the treasurers and got their comments about what each local municipality was doing to provide tax relief with this emergency that's ongoing. So many have deferred their next interim payment, or they've waived penalties and interest. And but also out of that, a number of them were asking, could the county provide some relief on the June payment to the county? It's the second installment of the county's installment, similar to what the education tax, what the province has done with education, moving that, deferring it to September. The municipal acts wrote a little different when it comes to the county in that upper level tier commitment, but my intention is with tax policy, I'm working towards that to provide that payment for those that can't make that payment would be interest-free for those 90 days, and then in essence wouldn't be required until September 30th. So it's a little easier way to handle it through the bylaws, but that's we're working through now and working through our cash flows. I maybe have to call in some of our investments that are coming due, but I believe that the county can do this, and but in the same sense, we'd show that being due that in June, and because some municipalities said they'd be able to cash flow some of that to the county that they had collected. So that's kind of where I'm going. Those that are really needing it, there would be no pose of any penalty, and I would give them relief to September. So that's how I'm moving forward with this. Okay.
So is that like September 1st or
September 30th?
30th. Okay. And you're communicating that to all the treasurers, like you said, right?
Yeah, that's what I said I was working on. So my first survey was what each of them were doing, and all of them were able to do their March installment to the county. So that's come and stuff. And then it was just discussion what they were going to do forward. And then a number of them mentioned about could the county do something similar to what the province did with the education taxes that were due at the end of June. So.
All right. I think the important part here is, and it's great that you're offering that, is you're deferring it, but it's still due.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Just
yeah.
deferring it, right? Right.
Well, and hopefully we're back to some normalcy, but yeah, it's step in times, right?
Okay, any question from county councilors with regards to Kevin's verbal report? Anything, Madam Clerk?
Nothing, Mr. Warden.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing there's no other discussion there, are there any notice of motions for upcoming meetings? Any notice of motions? Okay, I see none. Well, we're at that time of the day where I have an adjournment moved by Councilor Millen and seconded by Councilor O'Leary. At this time, we will adjourn at 12:30. Is there any opposed? What's that? Okay, that's carried. Well, very good. Have a great day, everyone. Madam Clerk, just before everybody leaves, we have the